Hey mamas, it's Mama Fox. It's 10 a.m. Central on Wednesday. I hope y'all had a great, 2 weeks? It's been 2 weeks since I've gone live here because last week was an off week. I go live most Wednesdays, but every once in a while I take a little break, or maybe I'm out of town or whatever. Last week was kind of a getting ready to go out of town type situation. But the last two, I think, videos I've done here, they are on YouTube, so if you want to watch them that way, you can if you miss them. They're in the pinned feature post at the top of the group. You can watch them that way if you'd like to. Hey, Tabitha. But they've been on fasting. And it's not because I'm trying to get you to do it necessarily. It's just that it's a hot topic right now. It's not a fad. It's been around for pretty much ever. I mean, it just has. But it's not that I'm trying to talk you into it or get you to do it or consider it. It's that a lot of you are talking about it and considering it or doing it. And I want you, if you're going to do it, I want you to do it safely and well. And I want you to consider if it's the right thing for you to do right now or not. And that is what I've kind of been talking about. So if you're curious, if you're thinking about it, if you're considering it, please watch the other two, because I have tried it in the past and done it and just completely butchered it, basically. Completely butchered it. And that was on me. It wasn't fasting's fault. It was totally on me. Don't be like me. Okay? Go watch those videos. Now, today what we're going to talk about is which is more important, feasting or eating, feasting or fasting, as far as weight loss, longevity, healing, repair, all those things. Which is the bigger tool for those things, feasting or fasting, okay? And I actually heard Dr. Ben Bikman, he's been asked this several times. I think one of the last times I heard him, I was re-listening to Dr. Bikman. If you don't know who that is, he is an insulin expert. He is a metabolic scientist, and his whole focus pretty much is on insulin resistance, all the things. But he is a metabolic scientist and researcher and professor. The birds are going crazy outside my window. And I really enjoy learning from him. He has a very clear way of talking. He's very clean, which I appreciate. Not that I can ignore some of the language, but I don't love it, if you know what I mean. I'd much rather listen to someone who chooses their words more carefully and thoughtfully. So Dr. Bikman wrote, Why We Get Sick. Highly recommend. Okay? Highly recommend. He wrote Why We Get Sick, and it's all about inflammation and insulin resistance. And that is a huge part of what I talk about and what we're here to talk about as well, even in this free group. Mainly inflammation has been my big thing for sure, but they're related, obviously. More and more I'm learning about insulin resistance and how prevalent it is. Probably most of you listening to this video right now have some level of insulin resistance, whether you realize it or not. It's very, very prevalent. It's been growing in prevalence over the last few decades, for sure. And there's a lot of problems that stem from inflammation and insulin resistance. Most chronic diseases, if not all chronic diseases, have that at the root. So we've got to take it very seriously. But I was listening to him. He has his own podcast of sorts where he teaches, but he's very teachy. He's very sciencey. And I do like his episodes, but sometimes I'm like, what? But his interviews are always so good. And he's been interviewed on lots of the big podcasts for sure. And I was re-listening to some of them recently. Dr. Pelz, who does not necessarily filter her words, she has interviewed him a couple of times. And kind of like Sean Stevenson, who doesn't always filter either, they both do a pretty good job of adjusting their word choices based on their guest. So if you've listened to Dr. Pelz and you're like, or you're worried about Sean Stevenson being spicy, when they interview Dr. Bikman, they tone it down, as they should. So I was re-listening to that, and she point blank asked him, he's been asked this before, which is more important? Because he does talk about fasting. He talks about it in this book. He talks about it in his more recent book. He does talk about it, and he talks about it in regards to really leveraging it to reverse insulin resistance big time, especially like pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes for sure. And but she asked him that, and of course she is also a proponent of fasting in a certain fashion, certain way for women, different than what she would recommend for men, or that is recommended for men. But he did not hesitate. What you eat is more important. So that's what we're going to say. First of all, feasting or eating, what you eat, when you eat, how you eat is more important, because you have to eat. You don't have to fast, but you do have to eat. So obviously, feasting versus fasting, which is more important? Feasting. Okay, definitely. That doesn't mean that fasting isn't a useful tool when done well, when done properly, at the right season, for the right mama, in the right way, at the right time. And it is nuanced. And I want to reiterate that, even though I've talked about that already, I want to reiterate that because what I've seen going around a little bit is people jumping into fasting, but they don't really understand the nuances or the possible repercussions, okay? And hopefully my previous videos helped on that a little bit. It's not that I want to discourage you. I don't actually want to discourage you from trying it, but you've got to be very wise and careful, or it will backfire. And it might not backfire in the first 3 months. It might take a year or two, but it can backfire if you're not doing it well and if you're trying to fast like a man. I do agree with Dr. Pelz on that. Women do not need to be fasting like men. Men can do it differently, and they should do it differently, and so should women. One of the things I will tell you that I've gleaned from the different people I read and listen to is that I shared this in a previous video, the stack of books that all mention fasting in a positive way, in some way. And what they all generally agree to is that you don't need to fast every single day. That's really not helpful in the long run. It might work for a year or two, and then it doesn't, or it backfires. You don't need to fast every day. You don't need to fast the same length of time. Some days you need to eat 3 meals, and some days it's okay to eat 2. Now, I know you're thinking, well, how do I get my protein goal in if I only eat 2 meals? Well, on your day, if you're going to fast 1 or 2 days a week, which is sufficient, totally sufficient. If you're going to fast 1 or 2 days a week, the benefits of fasting for cellular repair, longevity, and healing, they really do outweigh not meeting your protein goal that 1 or 2 days. You'll be okay. Now, do you need to be meeting your protein goals? And do we need to be eating more protein? Yes, most of the time we do need to be eating more protein, but many of us have spent the past, 5 to 10 years getting 50, 60 grams of protein a day. And we survived. I'm not saying we should have done that, but we did survive. We'll be okay. We did do that. And if you're increasing your protein, even getting up to 80, I know that still isn't enough. It's not. But even getting up to 80, you're doing a good thing. Even getting up to 100. Even Dr. Lyons, Gabrielle Lyons, who is the protein and muscle expert, even she says, look, if you're having a hard time really upping your protein to what she would say, aim for 100 grams a day. That's a great thing to do, okay? So I want to say this, from what I have read and gathered, especially for women, fasting day in and day out the same way all the time is not ideal. It's not recommended, not for the long term. If you wanted to do that short term for some major leverage with insulin resistance and healing, that could be okay if your body tolerates it and you're in that season, but not for a long time, okay? If you decide, okay, I'm just gonna do a longer fast. I'm going to eat 3 meals a day, and I'm going to build them well, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We're going to talk more about eating than fasting on this one, I think. But if you're eating those 3 solid meals a day and you're getting pretty darn close to your protein goal, and you know you've upped it from what it was, and you're getting in good veggies and fiber and good healthy fat and all those things, then taking 1 or 2 days a week to use the tool of fasting for healing, repair, it definitely reverses insulin resistance. That is going to be a great thing, and it's a great way to balance it out, okay? You don't have to hit your protein goal every single day of the week. If you're hitting your protein goal 4 or 5 days a week, you are doing a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And you don't need to obsess about it on that other day or two. That is what I would say to that. And if I were going to recommend a fasting approach, if I were going to do it, what I would recommend based on what I've read from Dr. Haver, Dr. Bittman, Dr. Fung, Dr. Means, who am I missing there? Dr. Pells. What I would recommend is literally maybe taking 2 days a week. Oh, I have another one. Mod Mama Heather gave me a great book. I will have to share it with y'all. Fantastic book. And it's, her name is Dr. Tabitha, but that's not her last name. I can't remember. And I don't know where Heather's at. She's not here right now. I can't remember, but it's called Fast to Faith. And Mod Mama Heather sent the book to me. I'm almost done with it. Fabulous. And the thing about the book that's fabulous is honestly, most of the book is talking about eating and it's talking about health and wellness and eating. It's not even talking that much about fasting, because while fasting is a tool, the more important thing is what you eat, when you eat, and how you eat it. That's more important. We got to get that part right. Okay. But if I were to recommend something, I would recommend 2 days a week, maybe. I would recommend 2 days a week where you eat 1 or 2 meals, like you fast. But this is including your overnight fasting, okay? So you're sleeping for 7 or 8 hours of that, hopefully. You should be sleeping for at least 7, okay? Trying. But 1 or 2 days a week where you do extend that overnight fast, but the rest of the time, 5 days a week, at least, 5 days a week, you're getting those 3 solid, nourishing meals. So I've talked about this, this approach a little bit in the Food Peace course, for sure. And if you haven't done that yet, y'all need to do it. It's really cheap, but it's powerful, okay? And of course, if you're in Foxy Foundations, we're talking about it a whole lot in that 10-week coaching group right now. But for those of you who maybe aren't in there, or you need a refresher to the Food Peace, or you haven't done it yet, here's the thing. Personally, for me, in order to eat only 3 meals a day and not snack, and not want to snack, and not have to battle my mind with food and the snack, the only way I can do that, at least at this point in my journey in life, is to build solid, nourishing meals that will quiet the food noise. If I were to go back to my 2023 me and eat that way and think I'm going to only eat 3 meals a day and I'm going to be happy and content and energized, no way. Ain't happening. Not happening. No way. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. It would be a constant battle and it would be miserable. So when I say to you, I want you to aim for eating 3 nourishing meals a day, they do have to be built well. And that is why I think building your meal well is way more important than leveraging the tool of fasting. Get your meals right first. Get the meal building right first. That's going to take you very far, and it's going to help you if you do decide to do fasting, especially for reversing insulin resistance, okay? Or any kind of healing, really. It is a great tool for that, but got to get the meals right, and Dr. Bittman agrees, okay? I've got his backing on this one. Dr. Bittman agrees. We got to get our meals right. And, oh, I forgot to take my phone out. Y'all, we still have a landline. Do y'all? You hear that? We still have a landline so that we can give that phone number out to whomever we don't really want to call us. And I usually remember to take the phone out, and I forgot. So it's just going to have to run its course. I'm so sorry. It's probably the pharmacy or something like that. Who knows? Or maybe it's somebody wanting us to vote for them. You never know who it's going to be. When we build our meals, the five main components that we want, but there is a bonus sixth one. This is what we talk about in Foxy Foundations. Having that vegetizer. I'm going to talk about why that's important in a second. Having your opening vegetizer that can be eaten while you're preparing the rest of the food. It's when you're getting kind of snacky, and it's literally, it can be raw or cooked veggies. It doesn't matter. It's whatever you want. It could be some carrots, some cucumbers, some bell peppers, whatever. Can you have avocado or guacamole with that? Absolutely. Salsa with it? Sure, no problem. If you need a little dip, that's fine. Make a little homemade ranch dip or kefir ranch, no problem. Fermented kraut, fermented pickle, perfect, absolutely. But you'll have a little vegetizer. The reason that's important, and this goes to, oh, Jenny, was it you that posted this? Somebody posted it today in here. Y'all probably saw it, and it was talking about, like, you know, some special product to naturally raise your GLP-1 hormone, some kind of supplement or pill, I don't even know, or powder, I don't know what it was. Maybe it does, but you don't need that, okay? And I do appreciate that at least it's natural. That's good. But you don't need that. You just need a vegetizer for real, because it's the fiber. And that's what Jeannie, I don't know if it was you or not, but whoever the mama was like, you know, she said, I'm not saying to buy this. I'm saying, look, it's fiber. We got this, mamas. We've got to increase our fiber. You don't have to count it. You don't have to be obsessed about it, but you do need to be aware. And in the Food Peace course, I talk about how so many of us were getting in lots of veggies and greens by annihilating them in the blender in the food processor and putting them in our shakes and putting them in our soups and putting them in our spaghetti sauce or whatever, and thinking we were doing a great thing, and we were missing the big picture, which was the strands of fiber. We were annihilating them so that their structure was gone. Is the fiber still there? Kinda, but it's kind of like if you took bricks for a house that's being built. You took some bricks and you took a sledgehammer and you pounded them into powder. Well, the brick is still there kinda, but that's not going to build a house anymore. It's totally a different structure. It's not going to work to build a house. When we take our veggies and our greens and we annihilate them in the blender in the food processor, we have completely obliterated the structure of the fiber, and it can't help us in the same way it could have helped us. The vitamins and minerals are still there, yes. So that's a great thing for when you can't eat. I talk about that in the Food Peace course. There is a time and place for that. Dental surgery, yes, of course. Little kids that just ain't going to eat it any other way. Of course, it's still better than nothing, but the fiber part is the issue. And it's the fiber that is what's going to help us feel full and activate that GLP-1 hormone that we want to activate naturally, that leads to feelings of fullness and satiety. That's what we want. Now, the other thing I want to point out to you, and I'm just kind of reevaluating a lot of different things. And one of them is walking away from a lot of specialty ingredients. I've actually never been a big specialty ingredient fan, partly because some of them I can't use. I think I've mentioned that to y'all before, I believe. But I've been doing I don't want to throw anything under the bus right now, but I will say I've been doing some specialty ingredients that I could tolerate for several years now, and I can't tell it made a lick of difference. Can I just say, I can't tell it made a lick of difference in my immunity. Certainly didn't help my weight. No, it did not. I just can't tell it did. And so I'm like, maybe it was good. Maybe it wasn't detrimental. I don't know, but it was a waste of my money. And so I'm kind of walking back away from specialty powders and potions and just getting back to whole food the way God intended it. And I do think, of course I have a book to show y'all. I do think that when we take foods and we extract parts and pieces of foods and they're no longer the whole food anymore. Maybe they're highly concentrated, but they're extracted out. I don't think that's the way God intended for us to eat them. And I don't think our bodies are designed to really utilize them as well in the right ways without repercussions when we're not eating them whole. Okay. So fiber being one of them. Okay. And again, y'all can disagree. I don't mind because I'm still trying to sort this out. But for example, this is a great book. I was telling my membership mamas, I think I've mentioned this book before, okay? This is Metabolical by Robert Lustig, okay? Really great book. This is the kind of book that like your husband would probably like to read. Lots of history about the food industry and big food and big pharma. There's a lot of interesting things in there. A lot of things that'll make you just kind of be like, you know, like get really like irritated about like, we've been duped, okay? We've been duped, and y'all already know that, but we have really been duped very badly. One of the things that he talks about in here, and if you have the book, it's on page 182, he talks about fiber, and he talks about that we've got to have both soluble and insoluble fiber together to make that mesh. And I know Glucose Goddess has kind of made famous the mesh, but she didn't invent that, and she knows she didn't. And she didn't discover it. That's just out there. If you want to have that mesh that will help slow down digestion properly, not to an extreme, because we don't want extremes. We don't want to have to take something for that or be uncomfortable. Who wants that? But to slow down digestion naturally, the way nature intended, the way the Lord intended, and to lead to those feelings of satiety, fullness, activating the GLP-1 hormone, we need both. He talks about it on page 182. He goes into the reasons why. We've got to have soluble and insoluble fiber together to create the mesh gel. Okay? When you take a food that is just a natural food and you start extracting parts and pieces of it, and you get just a dry fiber, you no longer have that, okay? You may have a dry fiber that may help with part of the issue, but not the other part of the issue. And a lot of times, those dry fibers can be very harsh on your gut, and they have some side effects and things like that that are just unpleasant, and that's because we're not supposed to be using them to that level, and for those purposes, okay? So I'm just throwing that out there because if we stick to whole foods, simple whole foods, things you can buy at Aldi or any grocery store, if we stick to whole foods, they work beautifully. But we do need to not annihilate them in the blender or the food processor. And we need to probably move away from extracting parts and pieces of food, whether it's parts and pieces of proteins or vegetables or greens, and sticking to whole foods as much as we can, because it's going to help us in multiple ways as designed. So veggies, Veggietizer. It doesn't mean you have to eat all your veggies first. Oh my gosh, no. It just means having a little something to get you started. Here is what I have found, and for those of you who are struggling, I get it. You're struggling to eat more protein at breakfast, especially. And or you're struggling to eat a savory breakfast because you're so used to eating a big bowl of sweet oatmeal. Totally get it. Or a shake or whatever. What I have found personally, number one, is I wait until I get hungry to eat. Oh, what a concept. Pardon my sarcasm. But I wait until I get hungry to eat, first of all. And I know some of us may be time constricted. I've been there too. But that's where when I taught school out of the, in the public school system, packed my breakfast. I'd go eat it before y'all, I was not going to eat it within the first hour or two of waking up. That was coffee time. And so I would pack my breakfast and eat it and shove it in my mouth before the kids walked in the door. That's just the truth, okay? Wait until you are hungry to eat, number one. That will help so much. But number two, what I have found is sometimes in the morning, sometimes even at lunch for that matter, I'm like, what am I going to eat? I don't know. I don't really want anything, right? I'm hungry, but I don't know what I want, right? Well, I have found that if I just go ahead and start working on my Veggietizer, whatever it is, simple, I keep it super simple. Don't be fancy, okay? If I go ahead and start eating my Veggietizer, well, guess what? It activates my digestion. It activates me wanting to eat. And that has been amazing. So that is another bonus to having a little Veggietizer, is it gets you ready to embrace whatever food, whether it's, you know, you're struggling with more protein or just more veggies or whatever it is. That has been such a blessing. So it is important. Okay. Now, do I do a Veggietizer with every meal? No. If it's an entree salad, no, I don't do one. I don't. I mean, you can, but I don't. Just depending on the situation, I don't do it every time, but it's very handy for that first meal of the day, especially if you're like, okay, I'm kind of hungry, but I don't really want to eat, but I am getting hungry and I know I need to eat, whatever, very handy. Then when you're building your meal, that one's key. The next one is also key. 30 grams of protein minimum, and that is a lot. Work up to it. You don't have to start. You don't have to go from eating 2 eggs, which is a measly 10 to 12 grams of protein. Oh my goodness, what a disservice we've been doing to ourselves. You don't have to go from 12 grams of protein to 30 in one day. You don't have to do that. Work your way up. You've got time. Take it slow. I still can only eat 3 eggs at the most. I've told y'all that. I don't know. I can't eat 5 and 6 eggs. I don't want to. So I have to add other sources of protein to my meal if I'm going to enjoy eggs. And I do enjoy eggs sometimes, but not every day. No way. No way. No way. Work your way up, first of all. Don't hesitate to have multiple protein sources in your meal. I have found that really helps me, especially at the first meal of the day. It doesn't seem so daunting or something for me. Maybe I'm sure it's mental, I guess. But having at least 30 grams of protein, that is going to trigger muscle protein synthesis. You need 30 grams minimum. If you're getting 25, you're wasting your time. At 25 is not going to trigger muscle protein synthesis. And that's what we're all wanting. That's why we're wanting to increase our protein so much, is for that muscle. And we've now learned that when we turn 30-ish, from there on out, we start losing lean muscle mass despite our best efforts, regardless of what we're doing and all that. We've got to increase our protein. And yeah, kind of with each decade, kind of needs to get more priority. So if you're listening to this and you're not 30 anymore and you're 50 or 60 or 70, it's got to be priority, absolute priority. But it needs to be at least 30 grams in order for you to initiate that muscle protein synthesis, but also to really help with satiety. That's going to work together and really set you up very, very well. Okay, but feel free to work up to that. The third thing your meal needs is veggies and greens. So remember, the Veggietizer can be small. It doesn't have to be big. It can be small or big, doesn't matter. But if it is small, then you want to have a little bit more veggie and green with your meal, whatever you like. Non-starchies is what I'm mostly talking about, but non-starchies is a huge category, all the way from carrots and beets and onions to green beans and celery and broccoli and all the things. You want to include ample fat, okay? One of the things I've been learning from Dr. Bickman in particular, but also Dr. Fung, is that we have to have fat, ample healthy fat. We have to have, like, we're talking 20 to 30 grams of fat per meal, kind of matching up with our protein. So getting closer to 30 is better. We have to actually have fat in order for the muscle protein synthesis to happen. Okay? This is like blowing my mind. I think I mentioned this last week or the last time, I believe. But yes, you need protein. Yes, you need protein. Yes, you need those amino acids in the protein for your muscle building. But in order for the process to happen, you have to have ample fat. Okay? So again, this is just getting back to putting all those natural whole parts and pieces of a meal together with veggies, greens, ample protein, ample fat, healthy fat. Don't be afraid of it. And then the last thing I like to put with my meals, Because when I'm eating these days, listen, when I'm sitting down to eat a meal, I am eating a meal. I am not dabbling. I am not snacking. I am not grazing. I'm eating a meal, okay? That's the point. We want to, well, hello, there's a woodpecker in my window. He's adorable. That was surprising. The last thing I like to put with my meal is a closer. Most always I have a closer. And that, we've talked about that before. That's kind of like a little signal that lets me know, okay, we're done. Time to walk out of the kitchen. We're all done. My closers vary depending on the time of day and things like that. If I'm going to have a carbier closer, a carbier type closer could be maybe some, I don't know, roasted sweet potato, not too much, a little bit. Could be a little bit of quinoa, gosh, whatever, fill in the blank. Could be any kind of like, you know, a winter squash, you know, whatever. I'm going to typically choose to have that at lunch, okay, if I can. Definitely not breakfast. No way. Learn my lesson on that one. Sometimes supper, just depending on the supper, but usually I'm going to have it at lunch. But it could be berries of any sort. It could be your dark chocolate for the day. It could be a handful of your favorite nuts, pistachios, macadamia nuts, whatever. It could even be like a nice hot cup of creamy decaf or herbal tea or whatever. That's how I'm closing my meals out now, because I still want to have dark chocolate and nuts and berries and things like that. And I used to do those at snack with a cup of decaf. But now I just take those pieces and put it at the end of a meal, and I still get it and I look forward to it. And I eat my 3 meals a day, and I give my insulin a break. I'm not constantly initiating an insulin response every time I turn around anymore. And I am satisfied and nourished, full, content, happy, all the things. Now, a 6th bonus component that I would encourage you to include at least 1 meal a day. More is better and great, but at least 1 meal a day. If you're able to have a fermented food with at least 1 meal a day of whatever sort you enjoy, that would be ideal for gut health. More is fine, but at least once a day, that is ideal for gut health. If it's a fermented veggie, it could be your vegetizer. That's a great way to do it. If it's kefir, then having a little cup of sweetened and flavored kefir to close out your meal is a great way to do it, especially dinner, if you would like that in the evening to kind of help with sleep support and things like that. But our goal here is to get our meals built well so that you are getting nourished, you're quieting food noise, you're crushing the cravings, you're crushing the urges, you're meeting your body's nutritional and macro needs when you eat. And get that part right first before you start jumping into skipping a meal or two. Before you get into the fasting, get your meals done well first. In fact, in Dr. Bickman's newest book, that's really what he recommends, okay? So this is how not to get sick. In his newest book, he actually talks about, definitely having the overnight fast, okay? Don't eat after dinner. Go to bed. Let your body heal and repair and not be working on digesting your food, which is not what it's supposed to be doing. And then, try to have like a 12-hour fast. What does that look like? Close out dinner at 7 p.m. and you eat breakfast at 7 a.m. the next morning. That's not that hard. That's pretty normal. Or close out dinner by 8 p.m., eat breakfast at 8 a.m. That's pretty easy. And over time, try to extend that to maybe 14 hours. So what would that look like? Dinner is over at 7 p.m. and then maybe you have breakfast around 9 a.m. A little bit later, but not too late. You're still going to get in 3 meals a day, okay? So he talks about a very gentle approach to maybe easing into fasting if you are in a season and desire to try it for healing and repair and longevity and weight loss for sure, and insulin resistance reversal for sure. He talks about that. And so that would be what I would recommend, is taking a very gentle approach And first, just starting with getting your 3 meals a day right so that you are able to just have 3 meals a day and you're not battling yourself in your mind, in your body. And then working into a maybe roughly 13 to 14 hour overnight fast. Okay, it's not that hard, but it is difficult if you don't build your meal well, say at dinner. Let's say you have dinner at 6-ish, 6:30, and you don't eat enough protein and you don't build that meal well. Yeah, about 8 or 8:30, you're going to want a snack because you didn't give your body enough of the nutrients it needs, and it's going to start looking for stuff. But I guarantee you, if you build your meal really well, the Food Peace way, and you have dinner at 6 or 7 p.m., you're going to be golden. You're going to be golden, and it's not going to be a huge battle. It's going to be so much easier. And then if you do decide to extend the fast a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, you decide, okay, I'm gonna delay breakfast. I'm gonna delay my first meal until noon, 1 or 2 days a week. If you ease into it by first getting your 3 meals a day right, and you start with a 12-hour overnight fast, which is pretty basic, and then you move into a 14-hour overnight fast, which is not hard, and still getting 3 meals a day, then when you do decide to try fasting 1 or 2 days a week, it's going to be so much easier. It's going to be so much easier. Here is what a lot of ladies have said, and this has happened with me too. Let's say that I'm doing a 14-hour overnight fast, which is pretty common for me. Still getting my 3 meals a day in most of the time, okay? But sometimes 9 a.m. rolls around and I'm either busy, not at home, or I'm not really hungry. And again, don't eat if you're not hungry, guys, okay? And it might be 10 or 11 before I have my first meal of the day. That doesn't happen often, but it does happen once or twice a week, okay? So maybe I have my first meal of the day at 10 or 11 and I build it really great. And then I'm not really hungry again until like 4-ish. So what do you do? What do you do? Well, what I've been doing, now I know every family situation is different. And Dr. Bittman does a great job of talking about this because he is a huge family guy, huge family man, huge. It's so sweet. So there's different ways to approach that. But what I do 1 or 2 days a week when that happens is I eat my dinner at 4 and I'm done. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm not going to eat when I'm not hungry anymore. I'm not going to force the food. I'm going to nourish my body and give my body what it needs when it's ready for it. And then I'm going to be done. Sometimes that happens and I didn't intend for it to happen. Sometimes it will happen and I did plan for it. And if I can plan for it, even better, because I'm not trying to not have dinner with my family. Usually I do, believe me. Usually I do. But there are a couple of nights out of the week, because we still have a 16-year-old here. There are a couple of nights out of the week where we can't easily eat dinner as a family anyway because of stuff, after school stuff, youth group, whatever it is. And so I have kind of settled into on those couple of days of the week, those are the days that I might do a longer fast and then maybe have dinner at a different time than when my son or my husband's eating it, because we're already eating at different times anyway. So just practically speaking, it has worked well. So I might do that a couple of days a week, and that's about it for me at this time. But I had to ease into that, and I want you to ease into it as well. I want you to be really thoughtful and careful about how you approach that. Start with your meals first. Get those well. And I'm talking like it may take a few months. It might. That's okay. You're nourishing your body. You're hitting protein goals. You're getting used to not just snacking and grazing and popping things in your mouth every time you turn around. That is a big deal. That's gonna do so much more for you, for sure, because you got to eat. And so even Dr. Bittman agrees with that. Let's get the food first down well. Let's get the feasting down well first. And then if you want to consider fasting, move into that, but move into it slowly. Take your time And don't do it the same way all the time. Don't do it every single day for a long time. If you're going to do that, do it for a short time for sure. But that's the thing I loved. I don't love the recipes in this book because they're so dairy heavy. I'm so bummed. But I do love the information in this book. And I love that he broke it down to make it more gentle approach to kind of ease into that overnight fasting, but hitting the food first. Got to get that right first, okay? So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to leave you with this one idea. You know that little phrase, you can't outrun a bad diet? You can't out-exercise a bad diet? Well, you can't out-fast one either, okay? You can't out-fast a bad diet. We've got to get our food right, get that done well, and then consider maybe using fasting as a tool if it's your season, if it works for you, but also you don't have to. If you get the food done well and right for you and it's working for you and you stick with that, that's going to go the farthest for sure. Okay. All right. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you are in Foxy Foundations, I'm going to see you in about 20 minutes. All right. Bye-bye.